Welcome to this little video tutorial to present you PAP, Plastic Paper Animation. The version number 4, which is no longer under development, so it is available actually for free online. PAP. So, I'm using in PAP the graphic pen, but this last version is also allowing the use of the mouse, which is useful for some of the features. So to start with, we have a blank screen, which is a piece of virtual paper. So with the graphic pen I can start to draw. It is sensitive, so if I press less, it is a thinner line. If I press more, it gets to be a bigger line. These features I can actually adjust here. For example, going up, I will go from smaller to a thicker line. I can also disable this sensitivity, so my line is all the time the same, and then I can adjust how thick it is. I can also adjust the color of the line. So if I press softly, I get a gray, and I can go to a darker by pressing more, all the way to black, but I can also decide to have it all the way to a certain gray. So it is possible to set some pen, and some are pre-recorded. But for this we have to access the second layer with the menus. The menus are all accessible with 4 buttons: F1, F2, F3, F4. So F1, and these menus can be changed place depending where you need to work. First menu, we have here save as, load an animation, load a background, destroy everything. We have the zoom, which is an interesting, a bit complicated like this, but I can press plus, adjust. In space, I can go back to my main board, go back to 1, zoom 2, 4. Voilà. Oh, where is my zoom? I can also rotate, which can be practical for some specific drawings. So let's go back to normal. And all the time, to escape these special functions, I can press escape and go out. Now this menu I will not present exactly now. It is to move in the animation mostly. Here we have another set of functions to add another frame. So this first one is to add a copy, and we see here on the left side the frames appearing, and when they appear with this shade of, let's say, pink, it is a copy, which means I can make a line here, and it will, I go up and down with the up and down arrows to move in the animation, and my drawing is instantly copied to the layers that are clones. But I can also add, and then it creates, the fact that I'm adding, it creates a new layer. I go down 1, I continue, I go down 1, So like this you can create a little animation. You can also add some blank layers. You can also delete layers here. The black and blue color in PAP, you have actually two possibilities, or to work with black lines or blue. And here you can switch from black to blue, and the blue can be very useful to make raw sketches, animate them. An important feature that comes also is to light the light table, and this is with the space bar, which will allow me to see the drawings by transparency. So here I have my blue character. Let's say we will do it with the ball. I will delete my fantastic drawings here with this function. I can delete. So let's start with the ball, for example. I see by transparency, I go down, draw another one. Here I will delete, and here we go. So I have the start of an animation, and then when the movements are precise, adjusted, I can go to black, switch back, and draw. And I will be allowed anytime to delete the blue. For example, here I'm very happy with the black line I've made. Pressing here, I delete the blue layer. I can also, once I've been drawing, decide that it is still a sketch, so change the black to blue. Here are the functions of the pen, so you can set, for example, up. This is the second, this is the third, but you can also decide for yourself what kind of pen you want to use. Once you have the setting, you press here, 1, 2, or 3. You can also have more. You can also erase by clicking here, or the same function is here, and then I will be able to erase my lines. What we have here, we have the light table, we can switch on and off. We have also here the setting of the light table. Here, this is the frame we are working on, and it tells us the light table is on for 3 drawings before, 3 drawings after. But I can also decide to see, for example, just 1 more, 1 less. And I can also adjust here how much transparent. The higher, the more I will see my under layer or under paper. But I can also decide to, if I'm working, for example, with 5, make jumps of 5 layers. So in this case, I will see a drawing 5 frames further, 5 frames earlier. So depending on how you are working, it can be useful. And okay, to go back to my animation. Here we have an interesting feature, the red pen, which is a pen, a line that will always be visible if I decide to. So for example, okay, now I'm in the erasing, so I go back to drawing. For example, this red can be very useful for setting a background level or a perspective point, and I finish this drawing. I can decide here to have my underlayer, which will be all the time visible through my animation, which can be useful for drawing characters and have them highlight the table. I have to set back the light table. Okay, 2 in advance. Up. Okay, so here it goes. I can for example, so I have a little micro animation of a blob. More or less with this. Here we have other features which are the copying. So it is possible to copy drawings and paste them. So for example, here if I use this, I will create a shape which is my cut, and then this object, each time I press, I will paste it back. So it is interesting, for example, to go and repeat an object and make it go through the animation here. But this copied item can also be transformed. It can, for example, be scaled. If I press here and then holding, I can transform it. The more transformation I will do, the more pixelized my item will be. I can also rotate. So once you get familiar with all these functions, you can go through the shortcut. Most of the functions have a shortcut that you can work faster. I can also switch horizontally, I can switch vertically, I can also deform. And you see, the more we transform, the less accurate it is. So it is good not to overreact with this. I can also make a copy that erases what is under. So this disappeared. To get rid of the selection, you press Escape. And you have no more, and you can start drawing again. You have also here functions that will apply to the entire frame range. So for example, here if I say I want to, so you have 3 possibilities: forward, backwards, or oscillate. So for example, I say forward, and I can copy this area and I will paste it, and then I get the copy of the layer under and under again. For all this copy pasting, it is rather difficult if you have to do an animation that is a bit clean. For example, it's time I present the functions on the graphic pen. So you have these 2 buttons that present you a circular menu, the down button, the upper button, and these can be arranged as you wish. If you go here to the little green screwdriver, you have the full menu of all the functions of PAP. So if you go here, you have the entire range, so you can adjust all your menus. The one we opened by F1 to F4 are visible here. This is correspond to F1. So all these functions I can transform. For example, I don't want the zoom, I just click it, paste it in the gray zone, and I don't have it anymore. I can also decide what I have corresponding to the buttons. And you can add functions depending what you are working on. You can also decide to have a single function on the graphic pen, clicking here. For example, here you will have only drawing or erasing, and here you select the first pen setting. But this can also be changed. So marking menu is to get this more complicated menu. Save and use. So now, for example, the down button allows me, as I've set it, to, for example, copy. I have an item, but if I try with the graphic pen to copy paste this item, and it shouldn't move in the animation, it is, as you can see, this item, if I go through quite fast by pressing down arrow, moving in the selection. But once I have my selection, I can also leave the pen on the side and start to use the mouse. And the mouse will allow me to make a much more precise pasting without moving at all. So my animation, you see, the one made with the mouse is actually much more stable. So it can be useful for animation that you want to be a bit clean. Escape to get rid of the item. Now there is an interesting and quite powerful layer possibility. So here you have your layers. You can actually move the layers as at wish, and this allows you, for example, here, yes, okay, I have now, so when I do this, I actually copy the menus when I move one up and down. But for example, we have here our okay, here this is to work with loops. You can move, for example, when you need to work just on a specific part of frame, you can move this, and when you will go around, as you can see, it stays in the range. So now I want to have the entire range. So I am on my layer 2, but it on the layer 1 is still all what I've done, so I can get rid of everything by clicking which one? This one. All. Up. To erase all the drawings. So I have now on this layer nothing. I see this red, which I can make disappear if I don't need. And I can also decide to see what I have on the layer under. In this case, for example, and I just press this little light bulb and it will activate it, which will allow me to continue drawing and to see what's happening on the other layer. These layers are useful for different things. For example, I want on this layer to draw my feeling. For example, okay, I have a drawing here which I want up. I go in the down layer and I make the first one visible. I see my little character and I can fill, for example, with another shade of gray, I can fill my character, so I will have actually the lines and the filling in another layer, and I can export them as separate video file, which will allow me, for example, to transform this gray in a shade of color and to be able to work separately. For example, for filling up forms, I can also make myself a kind of bigger tool, copy it and paste it up. Sometimes when you make this copy pasting, it doesn't understand any more transparency. You can just trick the program by going up and down one frame, come back to the same, and you see again by transparency. So now, for example, I have filled up, escape. So in this layer I have my lines. I can decide not to have the filling or to have it. These layers are also very useful for another possibility offered by PAP, which is to load, for example, frames that I've been filming. In order to do this, so I'm using another program, because you need to import in PAP some TGA file sequence, and I'm using a RAD video program, which is very simple. So taking a video, decide to convert in a TGA file sequence, and the program will create for each frame a separate file which PAP will understand. We go back to PAP. So I say, for example, in the third layer I want to import, so here load an animation. I want to import, what will we choose? A TGA sequence. Where is this? I had prepared something, but it doesn't seem like I have it here. No, why not? Okay, no, I've put it here, of course. Okay, I have, for example, here a sequence of TGA files, 136 frames. Press on it, say load. So depending how big and how many frames, it can take a little while. But PAP is usually quite a stable program. Once you get to know it, it's very rarely crashing. So loading, and it loads my TGA files as a blue background. So now I've set this blue background in the third layer, and if I go through it, I will have my video. So I was filming in order to draw on it, and I can, for example, go back to first layer, decide to have visible my blue layer. It is very good to set the same amount of frames, otherwise it will get very messy. So here I have, it's written here, 136 frames. This is the timeline that I can move in by playing with the yellow cursor. I can here directly jump to a certain frame. Here this is the frame per second. For example, now I'm working with 15. So I will set the same amount of frames in the upper layer, which is 136. So I just press here, 136. So PAP has created all these frames now, and I can start. I will choose something simple, for example here. Okay, I have my blue background. I don't have black anymore for some reason. Okay, it came back. Okay. So, well, I'm doing this very fast, but you understand the principle. Okay, I have my light table on with spacebar, so I can see my other drawings. So for example, I jump, let's say, 3 frames before, duck, draw again my character, and having my light table, if I adjust it with a bit more frames, no, it's not here, it's here. Okay, I want to have 3 frames before, 3 frames after. Now, for example, up, I've set 3 frames in between my 2 drawings. I can get rid of the blue to make it more simple, light the table, and I have my 2 drawings. So I can start to make in-betweens. So I can stick quite hard to this video sequence or whatever sequence I have, but also start to use okay, I have a problem today that Pap is losing a bit the connection, and I think it's because of the battery in my wireless mouse, but I will survive. Okay, so you can slowly, like this, create some animation, some movement. You can also just copy. I go in the in-between, up, up, for example, and create a movement. Now when it goes to save, the first time you will press on save, it will ask you where. So Pap is creating itself a kind of folder with sub-folders in it. So you can create at the beginning a full folder named, and it will separate things into animation, cutouts, frames, layouts. So let's say, for example, I call this test. I press save, but I can also, so now it has the PAP format, but I can also decide to save in other format, in a JPEG sequence, so it will create JPEG frames each file. I can also directly export in a movie file. Pressing, for example, this one in full size is actually a very good quality. This is for saving. I can also save my file and then save as, for example, here I want to save, and you can decide what you will see in the saving. For example, if I save now, I will actually see my my red line, so it's good to make them invisible before I start to save. And this way you can save layer by layer, for example, having your lines, your gray zones. More or less, yeah. You can also have, there is this cutout function. For example, I have a cutout of yeah, here I take my little man. I have a copy of this and the layers under, and I can decide to save this cut and to reuse in another file, for example. So I will say save my cut, and then you can load this cut, and once you load it, you have it instantly as something you can paste in your frames. We can maybe go through the function. So you have the shortcuts of the function under. Is it some things you can work with sound that can be useful? You can change the size of your paper you work with. This is all for looping in the animation. This is the drawing, transforming black, blue, deleting blue, adding clone frames. The pen presets. This is to work more with the range, to set the range, the end of it, the beginning of it, to stretch it. This is all the cutting one frame, cutting a series of frames, all this transformation of the cut. You can also change the color of something you've just cutted. For example, you have a piece and you want it to be blue or you want it to be black. So while you have the copy, I can just show this fast. I cut my little man, and if I press here up, transform my cut into a blue line. So now it's blue. I can have it black again. I can, in case I have, for example, black and blue mixed, I make a copy, and I can decide not to have the blue once I will paste. Also interesting feature. Where we are now. Okay, you go through history. This is the light table tools, and this red. You have also presets you can set for the light table. This is the layer. To activate, go to different layers. The zooming, which I was presenting, you have this escape button also, which you can, for example, you can also have a toolbar here. So instead of having to press escape, you can have actually a button here when you make a copy, save and use. So now it appears here. So for example, I have a copy. I've pasted it as many times as I want to get rid of it, up, escape. I have no longer selection. And this is it. Around, this little red street light is to go back in history. So I make a line, I'm not happy with it, red, up. I can also go back a few times in history. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is so the function to preview your animation. So now we don't really have a lot apart from 4 messy drawings, but if I press this, I will see through my animation. So now it's not a lot to see. And you press to stop it. You can also have it like as a full screen without the function. When you press, you go out of this. I think we went through most of the features, so enjoy yourself. Hope you get friends with this very interesting little animation program. Have a beautiful day.